right, let's dive into tactic 9, creating urgency and overcoming buyer's reluctance. So there's a number of things I want to point out in this, but let's just get over the very first part, which is this, is they're going to constantly be talking about the fact that there are kind of 3 things to look at is, do we have an able buyer, do we have a ready buyer, and do we have a willing buyer? The one that they're going to focus on a lot, especially in the first maybe third of this chapter, is going to be the ready buyer. When we're talking about a shift, really in any market, but when they're talking about the shift specifically, just because someone is able and just because they're willing doesn't mean that they can't come up with reasons that they're not moving forward, okay? But the ready, and I'm going to read what they've got here. Ready, this is the one that they will come back to time and time again throughout this chapter, and here's what they say about it, is ready is their personal reasoning, their why. And here's the phrase that they use, it is the one that is shift proof. Shift proof. That's an interesting phrase, but I think what they're trying to do is hammer home the fact that if they have a real why, it's almost shift proof. Now, let's use an example. They've got a couple examples in here, but a real obvious one would be someone's living, I'm in Minnesota. If I was in Minnesota and we had, say, a family member with a health challenge down in Florida, and so what we did is we wanted to move closer to them and get them taken care of. And so not only do I have a desire to go down there, but I've actually applied for a job, I've gotten accepted for a job, I've got to be down there by a certain date to start, and we're going to be directly involved in the care of that family member. My why is no longer just, my why is, gosh, we really need a bigger home with a little more room. Technically, some people might even become a need for them. But for us, that might be more of, that would be nice to have. It's not going to kill us if we have to live in this amount of space. But now, when I'm going down there and I've already got a job lined up and I've already got a family I've already committed and told them I'm going to take care of, that why increases to almost a need. And I will make that happen regardless of what is happening in the market. That's what they mean, as an example, by shift proof. So they are going to hit on this why a number of times, okay? So understand they are going to go through the able, which is someone who has available cash and creditworthiness. They'll go through that a little bit. The ready is what we just talked about, that why, that shift proof. And then willing, which is market expectations, okay? So I just wanted to stress that, is that you are going to hear that through a good portion of this chapter. And even when they move on to other topics, you will notice they will constantly come back to their why and making sure that you understand that. Have real dialogues with them. The last part I want to mention about that, I might mention it later on in my notes again, but they do at one point, and I think it's a single sentence, but it's not a single sentence to me, it's a huge deal, is when you understand their why, that you don't just ask the questions and get the why from them so that you can use it as something to manipulate them down the road. They do mention that. And that's not a small statement to me. That's huge. Now, I have worked with people that we've even had open dialogue, and they feel that this is okay. You have to know what's right for you and your spirit and how you do business. What I'm about to share with you isn't right for me, but it is right for them. And that is that the ends justifies the means. If they feel they'll even be willing to use, sometimes I have to ask questions in a way that will get them to what will allow me to help them best. And if that has to have a little bit of manipulation, it's the end that justifies in the mean, because in the end, we'll get them what they want and they'll be grateful that I did it that way. My head doesn't work that way. My spirit doesn't work that way. And so I'm going to approach that different. And so just know that they do bring up this concept of, we're in a position that we may be working with people, and people sometimes use this phrase in our business, and I want to caution all of us against this, is that we love our industry because we get to work with people on the biggest move of their life, the biggest financial decision of their life, the happiest time of their life. No, that's really not always the case. Sometimes it's not even the case 50% of the time. That's not reality. Sometimes we are helping people because they got a divorce. Sometimes we're helping people because there was a death in the family. Sometimes mom and dad had passed away and the kids, there's 3 of them or 4 of them or 6 of them, and they've got to sell the property and divide the funds, and there's a lot of stress involved in it. We're not always helping people with the most exciting thing that's going on in their life. Okay, sometimes we are. Okay, so sometimes that why is pretty raw. It's pretty raw. And the fact that they trust us with that why, you've heard me say it, and I'm going to say it again. Lead with compassion. Lead with compassion. Lead with compassion. I could say it for the next 10 minutes. Okay? Lead with compassion. Okay? They're entrusting you with this information. Okay? So then a couple things that they also talk about in this chapter is there are 3 ways to energize a buyer's urgency. So one of them, again, goes back to the why, but let's start with number 1. Become the local economist of choice. I'm going to hit that one real hard in a minute, okay? Number 2, help them tap into their why, focusing on the ready of able, ready, and willing. Is their why a need or is it a want? Both of them are okay, but know the difference. Now, sometimes they may not know the difference, okay? It's a learnable skill for you to have people skills and know how to help someone through that emotional process of really determining, I thought it was a need, but it really is a want. Or you're talking about this like it's a want, but based on what I'm hearing, this might actually be a need, and we have to help you to make the right decision here. So let me give you some information that'll be helpful, okay? So those 3 things, and we are going to mainly focus on, for me anyways, I want to focus on in this chapter pulling out a few words about being the local economist of choice. This is a touchy one for me. I'm just being real honest with you. Now, let's give you a real quick 30-second background why this is touchy for me. Because I didn't get in this business as a real estate agent, a realtor. I got in this business from the mortgage industry. When I got into this business, I think in 97, I went into the mortgage business. And here's what I experienced in the mortgage business that frustrated me to no end. And then when I got in real estate, it frustrated me again from the exact opposite perspective. So I've seen this from both perspectives. When I was a lender, the amount of financial and mortgage and lending information, advice, and guidance that agents gave to their clients was ridiculous. Completely ridiculous. I was working full time just to stay on top of my industry, to be the best professional that was possible for me to be within the mortgage industry. These guys who are agents, they also have a lot on their shoulder to be the best professional, the most well-informed professional within their industry as a realtor. But they were basically giving all the advice that they should have just been letting me have with our mutual client, not with their client, not with my client, with our mutual client. Okay? Know what lane you are in. Know what lane you are going to become freakishly knowledgeable about. And I mean freakishly knowledgeable about. And if you're not willing to put in the work to become freakishly knowledgeable in the area and the lane that you choose to work in, your clients should work with someone else. Because that means there's someone better than you out there. Okay? So part of what I'm saying is your clients deserve your complete commitment to truly put in the work, to know your role and to know your industry and to know your profession at the highest level. But if that's the lane that you're in and that's the work that you're putting in and you're a realtor, that means that the lender that you choose to work with, that you partner with. Now, every once in a while, you're going to end up working with a lender that you didn't partner with. You didn't choose. It was their lender, okay? You still don't step on their toes in something that they have committed their life to, okay? So as a lender, I was hearing agents all the time giving mortgage advice. That's a major problem for me because it takes me all day, every day, 5 days a week, stay on top of that as a lender. Now, opposite, okay? When I am a agent, a realtor, and I hear a lender giving real estate advice. So now what do we do about that? this is an important factor, is when you are building your business, the fact is networking is a reality. I want to have 1, 2, or 3 lenders that I feel confident in, that I have real relationships with, and I have real confidence, and I mean over-the-top confidence, that they are the highest and best in our profession, and that is why I'm referring them. Not only are they the highest and best in our profession, that doesn't just include mortgage knowledge and information, it's also their ethics and who they are as a human being, and the fact that they lead with compassion, okay? So why would I give that advice on mortgages if I trust them to that level? Same thing though, if they're starting to constantly give real estate advice and guidance to our mutual client, I'm going to have a conversation with them. Number 2, if it continues, I'm going to find another relationship. So when they talk about being the local economist of choice, I want you to be really careful with that. I do want you to do the research. I do want you to know what you're talking about. But I want you to be self-aware. You heard it in other chapters. Self-awareness is my freaking superpower. When I became a realtor, remember, I was coming from the mortgage business. I was over the top, unwilling to talk to them about anything that dealt with their finances. I would stop when they wanted to ask me mortgage questions. And the sad thing is, most of them knew I came from the mortgage business, so they trusted me. I was their dude. And they're like, they want to ask me questions. Here's what I would do every time. This takes discipline. Don't kid yourself. This wasn't automatic for me. This is something I had to make a real effort for. And that was, you know what? The fact is you're kind of starting to get down the avenue that we're talking about finances a little. Let's do this. Let's pick up the phone right now and let's actually call, and I'll just call him Joe for right now. Let's call Joe the lender. And we get them on the phone. Now, here's the next secret of that. Number 1, I would stop them when they would ask me questions, and I would suggest that we talk to Joe, even if I thought I knew the answer. The key word there is thought. I was pretty confident what I knew. That doesn't mean that I'm going to share it. Second thing is this. Every time that I met, if I would have an actual meeting with one of our mutual clients, I actually shared that calendar invite with my lender, who we have a mutual client. I didn't tell him that I needed him there. I wanted to let him know from 2 o'clock to 3 o'clock, I'm going to be with our mutual client. So if you see a call from me on your caller ID, pick it up. I don't know too many agents that think that far ahead. That's the level of connection that I had with my lenders. Okay, so think about this. As being the local economist of choice, a couple things that I put in here is key questions. What is your business plan for becoming and remaining, not just becoming the local economist of choice? Becoming and remaining. What is the business plan for becoming and remaining the local economist of choice? That's one of my problems with this chapter. It encourages you to become the local economist of choice. And then it ends there. And it talks about it over and over again, that same fact. Here's what I want to know. Do you have a business plan to make that really happen? And once that happens, are you going to ride that wave? No. To be the local economist of choice, to me, is an earned thing. It's not just because I've got the reputation. What do I do to continue to earn and keep what I had earned in the first place? Okay, so what is your business plan to get there so you really do know the economy better than everybody else and your local economy better than everybody else, and you are worthy of being called the local economist of choice? Now, what are you doing? What is your business plan to always stay on top of that? I wish they would actually give a full-blown business plan. I wish that was a separate chapter right after this one. Here is what we would recommend as a business plan to become truly the economist of choice. And once you get there, here's what you want to do to maintain that and keep it growing. That's just my opinion. So I would say if you are not qualified to come up with that business plan on yourself, get a business coach who is. Okay, get a real estate agent coach who is qualified to help you put together that specific business plan. Next one, this profession is not just about lead generation and overcoming objections, which is what seems a high majority of our industry is focusing on, okay? It isn't always about lead generation and about overcoming objections. We're talking about being the local economist of choice. So there's obviously something other than lead gen and something other than overcoming objection. There's a lot of information that we need to learn and stay on top of, and never, ever stop staying on top of. That's a big part of our work. The majority of what I hear is going to be about lead gen and about overcoming objections. This is a key part of you being the highest level of professional within the real estate industry. So don't put this aside. The customer is not always right. It's an important point. I know I grew up hearing customers always right. No, they're not. Okay? No, they're not. You do this for a living, and you commit to knowing what is right or knowing where to get that information. Now, the second part of that is just because the customer is not always right doesn't mean that we don't have a learnable skill that we've talked about in the past about, okay, so then how do we communicate that or correct a client? We lead with compassion, and that's a learnable skill. It's a much needed skill, but it's a learnable skill that needs to be taken into consideration. The last thing that it talks about that I'm going to end on this, and I have, and I'll be honest, I know I've said this a few times in this course. It's another one of those things that I have a hard time with, not because of this book, but because of what I've seen in the real industry. They say a few words about having a best buy list and telling your customers, like, how do I get my well, I won't go into it. You've read the chapter, or you should be reading these chapters rather than just trying to get everything out of these videos. They talk about a best buy list, what that is, how to use it, and everything else like that. I want you to just be real honest. If you are going to take that advice from this chapter and you have a best buy list, the amount of agents and teams that I've seen do this and their best buy list is not real. It's not even close. It's marketing. It's a marketing ploy. And please don't use it. I will tell you whether your best buy list is truly real, truly valuable, truly up to date, truly analyzed and torn apart nonstop, so it truly is a best buy list. If you're not willing to do that level of work to it, your soul will know the difference when you promote that I have a best buy list. Get on my mailing list and we'll make sure that you have access to our best buy list. I personally, I'm not really sure. I'm convinced that I've met an agent who's talked about their best buy list. They have different names for it and everything else like that. That their best buy list really stood up to the standard of what I think a best buy list really would be. And I haven't really seen one that is truly honest and that I would feel comfortable as an agent saying, if that was my best buy list, that I had a best buy list. So I just want to touch on that. Just be real honest with yourself, okay? Self-awareness is a freaking superpower, and being honest is once you're self-aware and you're self-aware of what you're saying and what you're doing and what you're thinking, then be honest with yourself from there and make wise choices. You don't have to have a best buy list, and don't have one unless you really have one. Okay, hope that helps you guys. Let's go on to the next tactic, and what is it? We are on 9 right now, so let's go on to 10. Expand the options, creative financing. This is a big one for me. All right, guys. Now, granted, coming out of the mortgage business, of course it is. All right, here you go.